Few guys have changed the way we think about cricket, and our Ashwin has to be one of those guys. He has been such an incredible icon of the game. I've almost always played against him, seldom played with him in the same side, but going up against him has been the most fun for me because I know it's not just a battle of skills, but it's also a battle of the mind. And today, in this video, I really want to celebrate the career that has been uh, Ravichandran Ashwin's and the person behind this career. And I think he's someone who deserves every accolade that comes his way. So, what shaped Ashwin's brilliance? What actually happened behind the scenes for him to become the cricketing genius that we all know that he is today? For me, the number one thing has been his preparation. His preparation has been second to none. He has multiple solutions for every problem. He has three or four different options for every problem. I still remember initially when I played against him as a batter, I love playing off spinners, and I've always dominated off spinners. And initially I would dominate Ashwin a lot, but as time went by, it became harder and harder and harder for me to dominate against him. He would be so ruthless with his planning. He'd actually study the game. He'd actually study my game, perhaps, and then figure out how to bowl to him, how to control this guy, how to keep this guy quiet, like how to gnaw away at him mentally so that he makes an error. That was the brilliance of Ashwin. He would actually figure out patterns of batters. The amount of time he studied batters, I think, was one of the biggest reasons for his success as a cricketer. We've all heard stories of Ashwin preparing to play against Steven Smith and the kind of tactics he came up with. And he actually was successful with that. In 2020, he dismissed Steven Smith 3 times in that series. It just goes to show the amount of work he puts into every series that he goes into. He's a true student of the game. And that is why this journey of his, or talking about him and celebrating him, has been such an interesting experience, because he's someone who believed in his ability when nobody believed in it. He started perceiving himself as a leader and then truly became a leader of the team, which is what is so fascinating about Ashwin. So the evolution was not just with tactics, the evolution also was with him personally. If you look at just the way he evolved, he was not a natural athlete. Ashwin wasn't. We all knew that. He was a tall, lanky off spinner. He had his own challenges as far as his body was concerned. There were questions about his weight in between, and he worked on that, and he got on top of that immediately. Didn't give anyone even time to kind of, extend that conversation in any way, shape, or form. He had injuries because he was not necessarily a natural athlete. Worked on those aspects and evolved into those aspects, and made sure he stayed on top of all of those aspects as well to evolve into a cricketer that kept his fitness really high. He went back to Rajamani, who he worked with initially in his career, but then went back to Rajamani and started working really, really hard. I still remember in 2020, I was also working with Rajamani at that point in time. And in that phase, I remember how he actually spent a lot of time with Rajamani to just improve his fitness so as to extend the timelines of his career. And we saw how quickly that paid dividends to him. He got obsessed with it. And it's one of the things about Ashwin. When he decides to do something, he gets obsessed with it. It's a conscious decision to evolve into where he wants to be and where he visualizes and mentally he sees himself being. He gets obsessed with getting there. And that's how you kind of pursue peak performance. He was one of those guys who got no cushion when it came to fitness tests. This is slightly on the political side of the game, where there are a lot of cultural politics as well, and so he was a big part of it, and he never got that cushion or was never safeguarded despite having the talent he had and the results he was producing on the field. And he had to navigate through all of that. You have to understand the mental and the emotional impact that takes on a player, so much so he even considered giving up the game in 2018, 2019, because they were not sensitive enough to his injuries. He literally went to that level of professionalism where he traveled with his own trainer to train him. I know that Rajamani actually continues to work with RR as a franchise, and despite working with RR, he also traveled with Ashwin for tournaments and for matches, so that he could stay on top of his fitness. There were times where, before every match, they would announce that Ashwin had failed his fitness test. That can leave you feeling truly just isolated within a team environment, and he had to deal with all of those aspects. And these are not aspects that people will talk about on a public forum. These are not things that will come out on a public forum or talk about in newspapers. You'll probably read about this in biographies and autobiographies after the fact. But while people are going through it, they don't necessarily talk about it. And these are things that Ashwin has actually dealt with through his career. Here are some of the statements that Ashwin has actually mentioned during the course of his injuries. He said that when I was struggling with injuries, I was struggling for answers as to why I was getting injured. I even started to study strength and conditioning myself because the injuries were taking a toll both on my career and on my mental health. And these injuries left a lot of scars on me. In the cricketing community, especially in India, the understanding towards injuries are actually quite pathetic. Clearly, there's a reason why I was getting injured, but no one was interested in finding that out. He had started training in 2009, with Rajamani, very basic. But in 2012 is when he actually started training properly with Rajamani. So then in 2019, before he went to the South African series, he actually extensively worked with Rajamani for about 8 to 10 weeks. And took the onus on himself. And he said, the only thing that's stopping me right now is that I wasn't physically right. So let me get that right. If I can get that right, nobody can stop me. And he gave it everything. And he felt like if I give it everything and still doesn't work, then I've done everything that I can do to make this work and give myself the best chance to be successful. And that's all that we can do. We can only give ourselves the best chance to be successful. He also worked with a mental conditioning coach for about 4 to 6 months. He actually has spoken about that. He actually used him a lot as a sounding board. And that's how you can use mental conditioning coaches as well. You don't just seek them as someone who you go and share your problems to, but you also use them as a mirror, as a sounding board to just kind of sound back your ideas back to you and come up with strategies. Use your mental conditioning coach to come up with strategies, your peak performance coach to come up with strategies for you to give yourself the best chance to be successful. And Ashwin did that. He used his mental conditioning coach, to help him when he was in a very dark place in his life. So you can actually use this not as a tool to fix issues in your life, but to actually use it from the perspective of, hey, I'm going to use this tool to empower me in my life. That is essentially what you're doing with a mental conditioning or a peak performance coach. And kudos to Ashwin for actually using that in his life and using that in his career. I think that's a fantastic thing that he actually did for himself. And Ashwin as an individual has always been a very clear individual. It's something that you got to love about Ashwin. He even spoke about how he has been preparing for life after cricket, like from 5 years ago. Right? As in, he's always looking to evolve his game. He went to the US and practiced baseball for a long time because he wanted to, improve on his batting for that matter, to improve on his range hitting for that matter. So he went and did that by himself. And he always knew, he's very clear about, this how, like, the minute I lose motivation for the game, I'm just going to quit immediately. Where he feels irritated to wake up and go and play a game, he's just going to stop playing. And it seems like that's exactly what he did. In a lot of ways, he was quite the pioneer. He was one of those cricketers that while he was actively playing cricket, he bought cricket clubs in his hometown. I know, and he started a cricket academy while he was playing cricket. It's unheard of in India. For someone of his stature to buy cricket clubs and get into the administrative side of cricket while you're playing cricket was unheard of in Indian cricket. And Ashwin genuinely is a pioneer in those aspects. He went and attended. He owns a part of I think the TNPL side. There's a team that he owns, and then he sat in the auctions as an owner. And these are just very different sides of a cricketer that you get to experience. And always someone who's constantly trying to evolve the game, trying to see where the evolution of the game is going. He's done certain absurd things as well, but that's what you do as a pioneer. You try out different things. You be brave enough to try out those things. And one thing you can be really sure, you can bet your bottom dollar on, is that Ashwin is a damn brave guy. So Ashwin, as a human being, has always played the game with a very clear sense of what's right and what's wrong, and very by the book. So much so that when he was studying the Dusra as a person, as an athlete, he felt very clear that as an off spinner, it's possibly very difficult for you to bowl the dusra without bending your arm beyond the 15 degrees that's allowed by the rules of cricket. So he didn't even go to it. He stayed away from it. He's like, okay, let me find another variation that I can add to my repertoire to be able to implement in games and be successful with it. So much so that he even went and started bowling leg spin. And that very famous Hashim Amla dismissal, I think it was in Bangladesh, where he got Hashim Amla in the World Cup, I think 2020 World Cup, where he got Amla bowled round the legs by bowling a leg spinner, during the game. It was amazing. And that is Ashwin. The fact that he stressed, and I think because of him, getting the batsman out at the non-striker's end, when the non-striker cuts the line, has become a perfectly legal way today and is not frowned upon because he did it so well. Even the narrative that was set along with it, and how he broke that narrative, and he said, hey, this is a legal way. It's in the rule books. It's a legal way to dismiss a batter. And I think it's because of him, and the way he kind of tread that line of gamesmanship and sportsmanship, and he kind of walked that line so beautifully, is why today it's frowned upon batters if you cut the line before a bowler has delivered the ball. That's all thanks to Ashwin and nobody else in the world. Ashwin was also a man of principles, very clear, not just on the field but off the field as well. And you saw that, when he decided to leave, the IPL in 2021 because of COVID-19. He just felt wrong for him to be playing a sport while his family was suffering. And he decided, I need to be home. And we've seen him do that on more than one occasion. He knew how to prioritize family, and he prioritized family at the moments that they needed him the most. And they probably would have said, we're fine, you go play cricket. But he was like, no, I know my priorities and I know the principles by which I live my life, and I'm going to be there with you all. Whether you all want me to or not, I'm going to be there with you all. And it was always heartening to see Ashwin be that man. It's such a great example to set for cricketers, to know when to pick your family over your career, and to be able to do that in a way that is not frowned upon, that is actually celebrated. And I think Ashwin did that exceptionally well. Ashwin has always been an innovator in the game. As early as 2011, he started innovation. We've seen him bowl with Sunil Narayan's action in an India-West Indies game. We've seen him copy Ajanta Mendis's action in an India-Sri Lanka game perhaps. And we've seen him try out a lot of things. And he was very brave to do that, to try out a completely different action in an international game. In an international game, guys, you got to be kidding me. But Ashwin had the confidence. These are testimonies of what one believes about themselves and their abilities. And Ashwin, I think, did that exceptionally well. The introduction of the carom ball, which I think, he tried really early in his career. I think he was picked up out of from Ajanta Mendis. Then he used that as a variation to his traditional off spin. And Ashwin had this thing where he was able to turn his off spinners to different degrees. And I think he had a certain amount of control with that. He had a beautiful undercut delivery that came out of his hand like that, but it pitched and just went away. So on turning tracks in India, he just became a nightmare to play against. His variations were really good. And I think you got to be obsessed with your skill to be able to get that degree of control over your skills. And Ashwin possessed that. So now he also had the leg spin variation here, guys. He tried it, he bowled it, adding it to another level of unpredictability for him. And I think the fact that he was so versatile in the way he thought about stuff. I remember him getting out, I think in IPL 2018, it was when Ashwin was playing for Kings 11 Punjab, he bowled a leg spinner to Rishabh Pant, and that ball kind of just hovered in the air, dipped, pitched, and caught Rishabh off guard and got him out. And this is when Rishabh just came into the scene and was banging runs. And it's this kind of versatility and variations that always kept batsmen guessing against Ashwin. Otherwise, when an off-spinner bowls in the IPL, as a batter, you're thinking it's time for runs, but someone like Ashwin never allowed that to happen. So Ashwin has always been known for his versatility, but one of the things that came to the fore, especially in the 2021 series against Australia, was his mental toughness. The fifth day of the test match, he was going to have to bat that day to perhaps save that test match. And that was the intent. He went to sleep on the fourth night, and his wife and kids were sleeping in the other room, and he couldn't get up from the bed. what had happened? He had a massive back spasm, and then he realized that he can't get up from the bed. So he had to shout and scream for his wife Preeti to come and help him. And then the kids and him and his physio, the team physio, and Preeti helped him get off the bed. So much so that his kids even said, "Why don't you take the day off today, and play tomorrow?" But the man spent the entire morning just on his feet, standing up, and if the opportunity came to bat, he would have to go and bat. So he stood up, sure took a lot of painkillers, did some mobility to get some form of relief. And I can tell you, a back spasm, and if anyone's experienced back spasm, you know what it's like. You can't breathe. It feels like you can't take a whole breath. I imagine playing international sport with that feeling. You're trying to save a test match and you have the opposition captain gnawing away at you behind your ears as a wicketkeeper, and you're having to deal with saving a test match with an injured partner, so to speak. Hanuma Vihari also had a hamstring injury, and both of them genuinely just batted out of their skins to draw that test match. And they did that with so much pomp and show. It was amazing. Yeah, and he was rightly celebrated for it. He deserved every bit of celebration. That attack include Cummins, Josh Hazelwood, Mitchell Stark, and Nathan Lyon, and they were venomous. And it was a deteriorating pitch. He dealt with that with just absolute class. Another instance where he did this was the 2022 World Cup game against Pakistan when Virat was batting. He went there and the first ball, and I can tell you, any other batter in that position would be thinking, let me get Virat on strike, or number two, let me get a boundary of this ball and try and finish the game. He was thinking not as a batter, but he was thinking as a bowler. What would I do if I was a bowler under these circumstances? And he knew that that ball was going to be more on the inside part of his legs, aiming on his feet to try and keep him quiet and just bowl a dot ball. But what did Ashwin do? Ashwin said, you know what? I know he's going to bowl this line. If it goes down the leg side, it's a wide. It's a high pressure game. The umpire will call a wide. So it was just aimed at his pads. He just got his pads out of the way and got deemed a wide. Pressure off the Indian batters at that point in time. And what does he do? He finishes the game. What Virat set up for India, Ashwin finished it. The calmness in which he went through that shot, the execution of that shot was just immaculate. And only someone of Ashwin's caliber and confidence could have pulled off at that point in time. And what a blessing to have had him at the crease when that was happening. Another instance where he did this. Let's rewind back to 2013, the Champions Trophy final. I think it was 1 ball, 5 runs to win and a 6 was needed. Ashwin, at that point, to think, last ball, what can I do to get this batter lose momentum into the shot? So what does he decide to do? He decides to pause in his action before he delivers the ball, and that took away the momentum completely of the batter. And brave of MS Dhoni to bring on Ashwin in the last over of an ICC final, but Ashwin held his nerve like the champion that he is, and brought his own thinking to it, man. To be able to say, you know what, I'm just gonna use this to get his momentum off. And any batter at that point in time is thinking 6. When you're thinking 6, you're holding the bat hard. You want to pump the ball to the deepest parts of the ground. But the minute he stops, the batsman suddenly stops as well. So he has to start momentum again. What a great time to use it. And again, innovative thinking. That's who he is, an absolute innovator and a thinker on his feet. What are the things we've learned from Ashwin? For me, I think his preparation. His preparation has been second to none. I think an absolute student of the game, someone who's played the game with deep passion and with purpose. That's one of the things I learned from Ashwin. Adaptability. He makes sure that he adapts to any situation and brings his own unique mindset to that sense of adaptability as well. And he's completely himself. The third thing for me is mental toughness. The resilience that he has displayed within himself has been absolutely inspirational. And we hear about it secondhand from Preeti's tweets, from Preeti sharing stories, and even just in her celebration of his career. You can see the amount of mental toughness that he's applied into his career. For me, that has been an absolute game changer for Ashwin, and something that I've learned from him. And the fourth thing is innovation. His ability to evolve in his own game, in himself, as the demand requires it, has been incredible. I think he's a traditionalist, but also an absolute innovator of the game. He uses his traditional skills as the foundation, but does not stop to innovate on his own game and his own skills and his own mentality as it requires. And when the requirement is there to evolve, he's probably the first guy to put his hand up, or the first guy to jump on that bus and say, I'm going to be the leader as far as this innovation is concerned. So for me, this has been my learnings from Ashwin. I've always felt that he was someone who should have finished with 700 wickets, and I think 700 wickets would have been easy for Ashwin, because I genuinely, my honest belief was that he had 2 years left in him. In fact, when I sent him a message, I said, dude, you had 2 years left in you. I'm a little upset with you, to be very honest. I've never understood why someone who helped you get to the WTC finals is not playing the WTC finals. It's bizarre. And the impact that has on you as a human being, as an athlete, who's performing at a very high level, no one will probably understand that, because it's a very personal experience. And until perhaps if he decides to share it, and if he does share it, that's when we'll know about it. Ashwin, thank you for everything you've done for Indian cricket. Thank you for everything you've done for cricket. I think there's so much more that you will do for cricket. I truly believe you will be an incredible administrator of the game, and I truly hope that you get to that phase and you continue to innovate, continue to accelerate the game forward. I wish you nothing but the best, man, and you deserve nothing but the best for everything you've done. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to grow, and wishing you the best always, buddy. See you on the other side, broadcasting perhaps soon, but beyond that as well. I think there's a lot more left for you to do in cricket. Wishing you the best. God bless you. Bye.